With that, what we're now going to do is actually get a founder's lens into understanding journey through the gaming revolution. And once again, we'll have none other than Sumiit Lakhutia, Senior News Editor, Times Network, to spearhead the session. And this session will feature none other than Rohit Gupta, Founder and Chief Executive Officer, Dream Game. Can we have a nice dreamy round of applause, a nice sporty round of applause to welcome the industry stalwart that he's very well known as. Rohit, thank you so much for joining us at IGC. And with that, I'm going to quickly hand it over to Sumiit. Let's get to understand it from a founder's lens. We'll get to understand this journey. And with that, Sumiit, over to you.
Thank you so much, Kavya, for that. And thank you, audience. It is always, like Kavya said, the toughest session, Rohit, in fact, at all these conferences is the one after lunch. But it's great to see the audience here. And it's great to be having this conversation with you because it's always exciting to speak to founders, to find out how did they start their journey. And over 2 days, we've been having such great conversations. The gaming space actually is such a different space. And let's be honest, there is still so much resistance in people because anybody, and I'm sure we'll talk about that. In fact, let's start with that because when you wanted to set up Dream Game Studios, start there, what was everyone's reaction first? I want to take that first. Forget about how you got the idea. We'll get to that. What was your parents' reaction? What did they say?
I think I was lucky on that front. So parents definitely encouraged.
Okay, and that's an outlier, I'm sure. We'll hear from them later, but yeah, go on.
Yes, and I totally agree with you, right? I mean, if you look at gaming, it doesn't have a very long history from a career building perspective, right? And if you look at games, it is actually one of the most complex piece of software that you can build, right? But then people are not aware of it entirely, especially parents. And it's a chicken and egg problem, like you mentioned. We'll deep dive into it. But before Dream Game Studios, I started Rollercool, right? That is how the founder's journey began, right? Sure. It was late 2000s, right? And in fact, the primary objective of starting Rollercool was to actually put India on a global gaming map.
Okay, fantastic.
Right? I was actually fortunate enough, at the early stage of my career, I was working with Electronic Arts in their headquarters in California, working on The Sims 3, one of the largest PC game franchise at that time. And one of the problems that I faced, right, I felt like I'm like a very small fish in a big ocean. And EA being such a large organization, in spite, I mean, many would say that it's like a dream job, a dream game that you can like work upon, but I was not able to make an impact, right? Really wanted to make an impact. And what better place to do that than India, right? At that time, definitely the gaming industry is still developing, but at that time it was still very nascent, right? So I decided to take a leap of faith, came back from US, started Rollercool around 11 years. After that, Dream Sports acquired Rollercool, and then we became Dream Game Studios. So the mission has been constant, right? Still today, we want to put India on a global gaming map. That's
fantastic.
the idea.
In fact, yesterday I was doing a panel, and some of the audience here must have been a part of it, where we were speaking about India to become a game development hub. So we had these interesting conversations. One point one of the panelists made, and I asked them also, is that, you know, for anything to get that big growth trajectory, sometimes you need that magic moment. You need that magic. So acting as I'll be the total layman to the industry, has that magic moment for gaming development, for Indian games, has it happened, or when do you think it will happen?
So, not yet happened. There are a lot of sparks that we see all around us. I mean, with Rollercool, we played our role to some extent, right? So, if you look at Rollercool, it was building from India for the global markets, right? One of the pioneers in mid-core games in India. But, you know, what we need right now is more visionary game development companies in India who are mission-driven, right? Who really wants to make a dent, let's say, disrupt game development in India. And there are a lot of companies who are doing that right now, which is actually very encouraging. I mean, where we are now in India, it was never before this good right?
Fantastic.
So a lot of sparks, a lot of very amazing products that is getting built in India. So let's see what future holds for us.
So I'll take that point ahead, and now I'll come back to the founder's journey. So, like you're saying, it's a great time for gaming in India. You've been at this for almost 11 years, you said, with Rollercube. What are some learnings? What are some maybe challenges that you faced in your journey that you could, I mean, to the audience here, people who are sitting here and who feel that, listen, I want to set up my own game studio, I want to develop games. Your advice to them from your journey and looking at where India currently is. What's your advice?
So first and foremost, I would say is the ecosystem, right? An ecosystem is pretty holistic. If you look at it, it's ultimately a value chain kind of a thing that you can see, right? I mean, my personal struggle when I was trying to build games of my own, I couldn't find a place or someone who can actually teach me that, right? And that's the reason I have to go all the way to US, learn that and then come back, right? So the core at the very start is the academia, right? Who can teach you how to build like really good games. But if you look from an academics perspective also, why would they invest if the industry is not there, right? So it's a chicken and egg problem.
Right.
And for a lot of companies, it is still a problem right now is the talent, right? The talent that you see globally versus what you see in India.
Okay.
So in India, there is a lot of talent, right? If you look at like a lot of disciplines in game development, you will see a lot of talent, whether it is, let's say, 3D. There are like phenomenal artists in India, right? If you look at engineers also, there are like phenomenal engineers. But game development is much more than that, right? It is design, product, audio, everything combined together. Like I mentioned, it is one of the most complex piece of software that you can build. So that entire 360-degree thing is still missing in India, and which is the reason why you don't see a fully built product from India, which can actually compete with the who's of who's in gaming in the world.
Okay. So what would be your advice to others who want to start their companies? What would you say, a couple of maybe top 2-3 things that they should keep in mind, or top 2-3 things that they can take advantage of? How would you guide them?
I think the first and the foremost I would say is for game developers especially, build games for a reason, right? They should actually take a product first approach in which they try to understand what is it that gamers are looking for. For example, so there are 2 approaches to this, right? For example, you see everywhere BGMI working pretty well, Free Fire working pretty well. You can say, hey, I'll also build, let's say, a Battle Royale game. But then that becomes a problem because then you are competing with such large players on the same turf, right? Where you're very likely to get beaten. So when I say that a problem-solving approach or a product-first approach, you say, hey, what are the problems, let's say, the BGMI players are facing? What is a gap in gaming currently in India, right? And what are they passionate about, right? So it's merging the 2 things, and when they create such kind of games, again, the probability of success increases. No one can say for sure that the game will be successful, but it will drastically increase the probability of success. I mean, that is what we did with Dream Cricket as well. When we decided to build a cricket game, we were like, hey, there is no game in India, right, who can come even close to, let's say, what is happening in the global sports gaming market. Let's say FIFA. Not even a single sports game which comes even close to FIFA, right? So the problem statement for us was that, hey, why should football fans have all the fun, right? Cricket fans truly deserve the entertainment that they can get, and let's give those people that entertainment, right? So, like we have delivered on that. I'll talk about that maybe a bit later. But yeah, that is the advice that I'll give to the prospective game developers. It's actually a very rewarding industry to be in. It's extremely good to see your games. In fact, people criticizing it, people loving it, people liking it. People get passionate, right, when they play the game, and it is nothing better than that.
That's true, because once there's passion and emotion, there's good feelings and there are bad feelings. They both come out. Let's talk about Dream Cricket, because my first question to you on Dream Cricket is, you said cricket because why should football fans have all the fun? But there have always been cricket games in India, whether it was first on the PCs and then on PS5, PS, whatever, PlayStations and mobiles. There have been cricket games. What was the thought behind saying, let's start Dream Cricket? How will we differentiate our game from others?
So, like I mentioned, right? First, the problem statement.
Yeah,
Like you mentioned, why should football fans have all the fun? So let's give that similar experience to the cricket fans. And how do you define that experience, right? So we decided on the 4 pillars of that, like the best-in-class graphics to begin with, the best-in-class gameplay, that's second, the best-in-class tech, and lastly, the best-in-class or the deep meta in the progression system inside the game. If you look at the current cricket games right now, they have got few elements, right? But the industry has evolved, but those games have not, right? And doesn't look like that they're evolving. So maybe we will be able to expedite that process of the entire industry getting evolved from a cricket games perspective, but that is needed, right? And if you look at the cricket games in India, it is primarily dominated by the local players. If you look at EA, which is one of the largest sports gaming, they have not entered into cricket, right? If you look at 2K Sports, not entered into cricket, right? Why? Because they are unable to see the potential, because no one has been able to realize the true potential of what a cricket game in India could become, right? So there are definitely a lot of downloads that cricket games are able to get, but the monetization, it is still very weak. Just compare it to like BGMI or Free Fire, right? What those kind of games are able to, the kind of business they are able to generate in India, in spite of the popularity of cricket, cricket games have been unable to do that. And there is a huge, huge gap there, which is what we are trying to fill.
You mentioned the word monetization. Very important, because at the end of the day, paisa kahin se to aana hai. Again, going back to maybe others in the audience who are looking to start their business, because I want to talk to you about your early years with Roller Cube, because there must have been at some point of time where, how do you manage that? You're making games, they're good games, but if the money is not coming in, then it becomes, how do I run my business? Just rewind a little, take us through some of those days, some of the challenges that you faced, and maybe some advice for them on that part.
Sure. So I think Rollercool was a little different when it comes to Dream Game Studios, primarily from a focus market perspective or a target market perspective. So we were building from India, but we were building for the global markets, right? Where monetization was not really a big problem, right? Okay. In India, it has been a problem, right, traditionally, but it is actually a lesser problem than actually it is, right? If you look at a lot of games which are global in nature are able to monetize pretty well in India. At the end of the day, if you give value to the users in India, they will monetize. And if you look at the place where we are in history, right? So India is turning a page with respect to how they're adopting digital, how they're making payments, right? I mean, I come from, let's say, a generation, millennials or 90s, where we were very used to piracy.
Yeah,
right?
Yes.
I mean, everything was free, right? Free music, free games, free movies, everything. But today, we pay for all of those things, right? And the generation which is there in India right now is more exposed to those kind of things, right? So definitely the relationship of, let's say, the youth with money and spending digitally in India is changing drastically, right? So definitely, I mean, as long as you give value to the users with your game, it is definitely possible to monetize.
I want to play a bit of a devil's advocate. So, what is a good strategy to go? And this I'm talking just generally for gaming, for anybody who's developing games. Option one is you put all your resources, all your thought process into one game, which you will hoping, fingers crossed, is the game that puts India on the map, puts your company on the map. The other option is to have 3-4 games which are chalta rahi gaadi. What's your perspective on this?
Okay, so I've done both.
Okay.
So during Rollercool, we were building like 3-4 games at once.
Yeah.
In Dream Game Studios, we are just building one game,
okay.
right? In fact, when I started Rollercool, a lot of mentors and advisors told me the importance of focus. And it is actually very underrated, right? But it is so extremely important, right? When you focus actually all your energy for the right reasons on just building, let's say, one product, again, it's all about increasing the probability of success,
Yeah.
right? If you're building multiple games, your attention is distributed. You don't do justice to that, right? And see, the reason that you're building 2-3 games is because you yourself are not confident that either of the three
एक तो
will
हो
work.
जाएगा
हाँ,
इसमें
you're
हो
playing
तो
a
hopefully
safe
एक हो
game,
जाएगा
right? It's like
yeah
अगर ये नहीं चला तो ये नहीं चला तो ये नहीं चला तो right? You have plan B, plan C, plan D, right? I think it's always better to go with plan A.
Okay.
Right, and like put all the efforts inside that. I mean, today, again, if I have to like start another game, I would still go with the focused approach in which just focus on one game and get it right.
Okay. Is there, from a strategy point of view, any thought process saying कि अभी market में ये trend चल रहा है तो ऐसा game बनाना चाहिए या Candy Crush तब था तो maybe something like that. I mean, how do you pick that one game?
Okay, so from a trend perspective, definitely.
Yeah, like how important are trends? Do we have to, should they be, again, I'm just talking from a point of somebody here who wants to set up his or her own game studio and they're picking, okay, which is the game that I should pick to develop?
Okay, I think when deciding a trend, it shouldn't be decided based on the genre, but more decided based on the mechanics that works inside the game, right? A simple example I'll give you. For example, two approaches to look at, let's say, BGMI or Free Fire would be, hey, Battle Royale is working pretty good, let's build a Battle Royale game. The second way to look at the same thing from a trend perspective, hey, cosmetics as a trend inside a game that you sell is really working out pretty well. So whatever game that I'm really passionate about, I'll try to see if that is the trend that I capitalize on, right? So looking at the same thing, but with two different perspectives.
Okay, important point. That's a good answer there. That I'm sure will be helpful to people. Talking now on the softer skills, first part, before we get into skill and talent. But one part for a founder is the hurdles, the challenges by way of success and I don't want to call it failure, but like, okay, your game doesn't do well. People, the public doesn't like it. It doesn't pick up. Mentally, how do you, gear up for that? Because, I mean, it's a setback. You've thought this is the one, you put all your effort, money, time into it, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. How do you manage your mental space to keep going?
I think it's a pretty, I think it's a common trait. I think that I think almost all the founders have pretty much. And I think not just the founders, like almost everyone. It's again, how do you look at failure, right? So for example, at Dream Game Studios, we embrace failure, right?
Yeah.
We say if you're not failing enough, then you're not trying enough.
Nice,
right?
nice.
And ultimately, I think that it's a blessing. You should fail often, fail fast, because that just makes you understand, like, I think it's a very famous saying by maybe Edison, or maybe Ford, right? I just know 1,000 ways what not to do, right, at the end of the day. So it just increases the probability of success. So, I mean, during Rolocule, right, we are actually more proud of the journey that we went through. We had our own failures and successes, right? But we cherish the failures more, right? Because as they say, right, what doesn't kill you only makes you stronger.
Fantastic. We spoke about, for founders, your advice, your learnings from your journey for founders. What would be your advice to people who are looking to work in the industry, not necessarily set up their own business, but get a job maybe at Dream Game Studios, get a job at other game studios? What should they be studying? What are some of the skills they should be getting to get success in that space?
So for one, I mean, gaming industry from a disciplines perspective is very vast, right? If you remove the art and design part of things, it is just like any other tech company, right? So let's say if you're a backend engineer, working at Dream Game Studios is very similar tech stack, right, that you would find in any other tech company which is out there, whether it is, let's say, Dream11 or whether it is Zomato or whether it is Swiggy or Amazon and things like that.
Sure.
So for backend engineers, it's a pretty easy switch, right?
Okay, great.
But definitely is much more exciting when it comes to gaming because the kind of users and the volumes that you get is phenomenal, right? And again, right, to manage such huge number of users is a different challenge altogether. From a gameplay engineer's perspective, definitely it's a very specialized knowledge, right? So I mean, if you have not done game development, then it's actually a bit difficult to switch to game development. But in case the fundamentals, computer science fundamentals is pretty strong, C++, C and all those things, again, pretty easy to make a switch. Product, again, pretty easy to make a switch.
Right.
UI, UX and things like that. But art is a different ball game altogether. So the gaming and the, let's say, the VFX industry or the animation industry shares a lot of artists, right? So a lot of people, folks from those industries often come to gaming and vice versa, so on and so forth. And game designers is very unique, right? It's a very unique thing that only gaming industry has. No one else has that.
It's a special art, special skill.
Yes.
So whenever I'm doing sessions with tech companies or like gaming companies, so okay, I'll put it this way. When I'm speaking to people like in manufacturing, auto and stuff like that, I told them, okay, what's the roadmap for 5 years? How do you see it 5 years later? With tech and gaming, you don't do 5 years because it's an eternity for them. So he's like, no, I'm not going to ask you 5 years. I'll ask you 1-2 years. What are some trends that you're seeing? Where do you see the gaming industry in India reaching in 1-2 years?
1-2 years. In fact, that's a very short timeline that you gave.
ठीक है तो आप extend कर लो 3 years 5 years
3-5 years. So basically I'll first talk about sports. So we
Sure.
see that with Dream Cricket becoming fully developed and achieving that product market fit, which is what we are aiming for, we will be able to see a big international player entering India, focusing on the local sports, which is cricket.
Right.
That is one thing that we see. We see consolidation in the battle royale genre of games. We have BGMI, Free Fire already. 2 more games are coming in. One is Indus Battle Royale and Free Fire. So we see some consolidation happening. A lot of competition happening between the global and the local players.
Right.
Let's see how that pans out. We'll definitely be cheering for the local games
Of
to
course,
beat them.
100%.
Then we see more in-app purchases happening by Indian gamers inside the games. And I think lastly what I see is a lot of big companies focusing on acquiring the international IPs rather than doing the game development locally in India.
Okay. Like you said, you were lucky, your parents were all right with you starting up a gaming and going into the gaming space. Through our audience, we're recording this, we're putting it out on the internet, on television, to people watching, to parents specifically watching. What would you tell them about, their children who might be wanting to explore a career in gaming? What would be your 2 cents? What is your thoughts?
Okay. So first of all, like game development is extremely rewarding and challenging. That would be first. And whenever you are able to, and I would say it is, like I had mentioned in the past as well, it is one of the most complex, right? Whenever you solve really, really complex problems, the kind of confidence that you gain in solving more problems in the future just increases, right? So from a confidence building perspective, gaming industry is the best.
Wow, that's a great perspective, yeah.
Second is from a financial perspective, right? I think a lot of parents would be worried, hey, will my kids get enough salaries and things like that? Then I can say that the gaming industry is equally competitive when it comes to compensation versus the who's and who's in the industry, right? Tech particularly, right? So there is no like bad things that we see in the gaming. In fact, you get exposed to more things. The kind of environment that you usually see in gaming, the kind of collaboration that you see in gaming is unlike any other industry, right? Because like I mentioned, you are collaborating with the artists, right? You're collaborating with the game designers, right? So the kind of disciplines that you interact with inside a gaming company, you won't find anywhere else, right? So a more rewarding career, compensation-wise, it is pretty safe and just makes you a better problem solver.
Wow, that's a great perspective. Future plans for Dream Game Studios, is it, like you said, Dream Cricket, is it just that? Are you going to start venturing out into other games? What's the future
Yeah,
plan?
definitely. I mean, it's just a start, Dream Cricket, right? We are a sports gaming company, and we are going to be a sports gaming company going forward as well. So we are starting with Dream Cricket. We want to first become one of the biggest sports gaming company in India. Cricket is our first game, maybe a few more sports games coming after that. And after that, we want to go global, right? So the idea is to become one of the largest sports gaming company in the world and walk shoulder to shoulder with the biggest names out there, right? So you'll see a game for every sport that is out there in the world from Dream Game Studios in the future.
Okay, I will look forward to the Formula One version for that, because why should EA
I'm a
have all
huge
the
fan
fun?
as well.
Why should EA have all the fun there? Last couple of 2-3 questions before we wrap this up and hand it back to Kavya. Which is your favorite game to play from your own stable? So I know Dream Game Studios is only Dream Cricket, but from Roller Cube or my earlier one, what were your kind of favorite game one?
Like from the games that we
You have
built
made,
ourselves.
that you have been involved in making. I'll come to the competitor games after that. But first, what that you have been involved in making, tell me your favorite.
Yeah, so apart from Dream Cricket, which is my current favorite, Flick Tennis has been my favorite till now. In fact, Flick Tennis had a similar story. When we were trying to take on, let's say, Gameloft at that time, who had real tennis.
Yeah.
And we were able to like successfully beat them, which was huge. But again, right, extremely proud of the game that we were able to build during Roller Cube time.
Fantastic. And competitors' favorite game? Or you don't want to
Like
tell
from
me
a
that?
cricket perspective?
From any game studio, globally, Indian, what would be your
So
favorite?
that has changed, and I think as we age, that keeps on changing as well. So during my younger days, Counter-Strike was my favorite game. I used to play a lot. Then Clash Royale is another one.
Yeah.
PUBG is another, right?
Super.
So yeah, these three games.
Okay, fantastic. Last bit as we wrap up, Rohit, just your closing thoughts on game development, looking at India's place in the game development space globally. Where do you see India currently? Where do you see our potential?
So I think we are still at a starting line, I would say. From a game development perspective, there is a lot of action happening. And when I say game development, I'm referring to primarily, let's say, the AAA kind of games. I'm not referring to RMG here. RMG,
Right.
I think we are doing a phenomenal job when it comes to India. But non-RMG, we are still at a starting line, right? Because we haven't seen a lot of big games from India yet who have been able to make mark on the global scale, right? So that is where we see, but like I mentioned, a lot of sparks that we see, a couple of very exciting games coming out. I'm particularly very excited because, like I said, right, the mission is to put India on a global map. So it's whether I do it, someone else do it. At the end of the day, as long as the mission is achieved, right, and we all together do it, right? The gaming industry in India is pretty small, right? And I think everyone has that intention to make it big, right?
Sure.
And
We just need that somebody does that, and it'll benefit the whole industry, the full economy, the full country.
From an ecosystem perspective,
The
that
full
is what is
ecosystem.
needed, right? Because see, at the end of the day, it will increase investors' confidence
Yeah.
to invest in more gaming companies. When you invest in more gaming companies, more jobs, right? More jobs means more academics, right? Then more people, then it's like a
chicken and egg situation will be better off.
circle of life, right?
Circle
kind
of life.
thing.
Let's hope we move from sparks to a huge, big bonfire very soon. Thank you so much, Rohit, for talking
Thank
to
you,
us.
thank
Thank
you
you
so
for
much.
that. And Kavya, back to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much
Thank you.
indeed. I wanted to check, can we take some questions from the audience as well? Rohit, would you be open to it?
Sure.
Let's make this super interactive. I'm going to open the floor for questions as well from our members of the audience. So let's take some questions. I'm going to request you to please raise your hands. We'll have the mics passed as well. Any questions? Or it looks like actually Sumit
So,
asked all our questions.
I was just
Because
going to say that.
You literally covered the ground for us.
I was just going to say that, take it as a pat on my back, saying, okay, I covered all the questions.
Is the truth. But just a quick check. Any further questions from the audience? Yes, we do have a question. See, there's always room for more. Yes.
But that's great.
We'll quickly pass the mic. Sir, if you could please raise your hands. Yes, sir.
So may I request you to stand up, and if you could just let us know your name and a little bit about yourself and then your question. Sorry, we'll just put it on, don't worry. 1 second. Just could you test it again? Check. That's okay, it's just... We'll get you another mic, don't worry. We will take your question. Yeah. Yes, please.
Hello, I'm Ashish. I'm co-founder of Hortify. We are a Bangalore-based gaming company.
Oh, superb.
So how do one decide which game to build before actually building it? How do we minimize the chances of failures?
$1 million question.
Like how do you decide?
So couple of things that we do. First is we speak to the users, the potential users itself, right? To understand where there is a gap. We try to look at, so let's say if you're passionate about, let's say, a car racing game, right? So first of all, you go and check out all the reviews that the car racing games have right now, right? You will be able to actually understand the problems or a common theme that you will be able to see that none of the games has been able to satisfy. Second thing that you can do is run multiple surveys, talk to people, talk to users, your potential market, and there are like different ways in which you can do it. That's second. And third is to actually build a small prototype and put it out there, right? It doesn't make sense to like just go all guns blazing and just build the product out there that nobody might not want eventually. But yeah, step-by-step ways to figure that out.
Okay. Thank you for that. Any more questions? Yes, sir, if you could just stand up, we'll get the mic to you. Sure, 1 second, sir. There, that side. Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Hi. Thanks. Very insightful session. I'm Gagan Dewan from Salesforce. So I broadly manage the business development for media and entertainment for Salesforce. The question to you is, what IPL has done for cricket? It changed the entire way and the opportunities. What would be the IPL model for gaming? As per you. Could be.
Are you referring to like an esports kind of a thing?
I'm saying what could be that model that gets more people to participate, make it popular, make it acceptable, give more opportunities, open up people to look at gaming positively.
I think you're talking about the tipping point. What would be that
Exactly.
tipping
What
point?
what could
So
be?
I think multiple factors will play a role into that. But if I have to like single pointedly define it, a game who is able to generate millions and billions of dollars.
Okay, and what role would technology play?
A
Which
huge
part?
role.
Okay.
Definitely. I mean, if you're able to generate that kind of revenues, the kind of volume or the number of users that you are serving through that product will be humongous as well. And that is where technology plays a huge role to be able to like satisfy those users. And again, like if you look at India particularly, the fragmentation of Android devices which is out there is phenomenal, right? So to be able to build a product with a tech that is able to give you a smooth experience on all those devices, So two things, right? From a back-end as well as a front-end perspective, the tech becomes actually the integral part of it.
Yeah, just a adding question to that. I'm sorry, I'm taking a little more time.
Sure.
Is that whenever we've been having these conversations with leaders in the gaming, you guys call yourself a tech organization, right? Why can't we move away from being a tech organization? Because tech is by default, right? A gaming organization and tech partners an integral part. Why the build mentality for things not gaming specific? Where I'm coming from is customer experience, customer acquisition, fan engagement. There are enough in many tech partners who've been doing that for other industries, which are replicable here. Why do you want to build everything grounds up?
Okay. So, in fact, a very good point that you mentioned, right? So, if you look at Dream Game Studios, we often call ourselves as a product organization, a product-first organization, where the user experience becomes the core of it. And like I said, so we have like 3 pillars, right? Which is art, design, as well as tech, right? So these 3 pillars are actually supporting the product, which is at the end of the day, the user experience, which are the points that you mentioned, whether it is the fan engagement, the user experience, and things like that.
Cool. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I think we'll hand it back to Kavya so we can continue with the session. Thank you so much, Rohit, for that
Thank you so much,
fantastic
sir.
session. Thank you.